I watched my coworker take credit for my entire project in front of the CEO. My mouth opened, but no words came out. That silence cost me more than just a promotion. It cost me my dignity, my savings, and nearly my sanity. But what happened next? Nobody saw that coming. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or silenced at work, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because by the end of this video, you'll understand why speaking up, even when your voice shakes, can change everything. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I was 32 years old when my life split into two parts. Before the silence and after. For 4 years, I'd been a marketing analyst at a mid-sized tech company in Atlanta. Nothing fancy, nothing glamorous, just steady work that paid my bills and made my grandmother proud. She raised me after my parents passed. And her philosophy was simple. Keep your head down, work hard, and let your work speak for itself. So that's exactly what I did. Every morning, I'd arrive at the office 15 minutes early. I'd make my coffee, settle into my cubicle, and lose myself in spreadsheets and market research. My colleagues were friendly enough, but I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to build a career slowly and quietly, one successful project at a time. My supervisor, Linda, seemed to appreciate my dedication. She'd pop by my desk occasionally with a smile and a compliment about my thoroughness. I thought we had a good working relationship. I thought she saw my value. Then came the big project. Our company was launching a new product line, the biggest expansion in 5 years. And someone needed to lead the market research and strategy presentation. When Linda assigned it to me, I felt this surge of validation. This was my moment. For 3 solid months, I lived and breathed that project. I stayed late into the evenings, came in on weekends, and analyzed every piece of data I could find. I interviewed potential customers, studied our competitors, and created projections that I checked and rechecked until they were perfect. The presentation itself became my masterpiece. 50 slides of carefully crafted insights, beautiful charts, and strategic recommendations that could genuinely change our company's trajectory. I remember sitting back in my chair one night at 11 p.m., looking at the final version on my screen and feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine pride. This was more than good work. This was exceptional. The day before the big meeting, Linda called me into her office for a final review. She went through the entire presentation with me, nodding and taking notes. When we finished, she looked at me with this warm smile and said, "This is game-changing work. You've outdone yourself." Then she asked me to email her the final presentation for safekeeping, just to make sure nothing went wrong with the files before tomorrow's meeting. I didn't hesitate. I sent her everything, the presentation, my notes, all my backup data. Why wouldn't I? She was my supervisor and I trusted her. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing my key points, imagining how I'd answer questions from the executives. I picked out my best outfit, pressed it twice, and set 3 alarms to make sure I wouldn't be late. When I arrived at the office the next morning, my hands were shaking slightly, but it was the good kind of nervous. The conference room was already filling up with executives, including our CEO, a man I'd only seen from a distance. I took my seat at the table, my portfolio in front of me, ready. Linda arrived 10 minutes late, which was unusual for her. She looked polished and confident, carrying a leather folder and wearing this perfectly tailored suit. She greeted everyone warmly, then set up her laptop at the head of the table. That's when I noticed it. The printouts she was distributing around the table were from my presentation. But the name at the top wasn't mine. It was hers. My stomach dropped so fast, I thought I might be sick. But I told myself to stay calm. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she was just presenting on my behalf. Maybe she'd introduce me in a moment. I waited. Linda began the presentation, and with every word, my heart sank deeper. She wasn't just presenting my work, she was claiming it. After 3 months of dedicated research, she said, clicking through my slides, I've identified several key market opportunities. My research, my late nights, my words coming out of her mouth like they'd always belonged to her. The executives leaned forward, impressed, taking notes. The CEO nodded along, occasionally asking questions that Linda answered smoothly, using my analysis, my insights, my projections. I sat there frozen, my throat tight, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I kept thinking that someone would notice, someone would say something. But everyone was focused on Linda, watching her command the room with my content. She even glanced at me a few times, and I swear I saw something in her eyes. Not guilt, but satisfaction, like she was daring me to speak up. Then came the moment that still haunts me. The CEO leaned back in his chair and said, "Linda, this is exceptional work. How long did this take you?" She didn't miss a beat. "About 3 months of dedicated research and late nights," she replied, her voice steady and confident, the room filled with murmurs of approval. Then the CEO asked the question that made everything stop. "Did anyone else contribute to this?" Linda paused. She turned and looked directly at me. The entire room followed her gaze, and suddenly every executive was staring at me, waiting. This was my chance. This was the moment to speak up, to claim my work, to tell the truth. I felt my mouth open. I felt words forming in my throat, but nothing came out. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, and then Linda filled it. "My team provided some minor data support," she said smoothly. And just like that, the moment passed. The meeting ended with applause. The CEO shook Linda's hand and mentioned something about a promotion. Everyone filed out chatting about the impressive presentation while I sat there feeling like I just watched my own funeral. I somehow made it to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and stared at the cold tile wall. Why didn't I say something? What was wrong with me? A colleague, Brianna, followed me in. She touched my shoulder gently and said, "Girl, that was your work. Everyone on the team knows it." I made excuses through my tears. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Linda would give me credit later. Maybe I misunderstood the situation. Even as I said these things, I knew I was lying to myself. Brianna just looked at me sadly and walked out. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Linda got promoted to senior director with a corner office and a substantial raise. I got nothing. No recognition, no acknowledgement, not even a thank you. When I tried to schedule a meeting with her to discuss what happened, her assistant kept telling me she was too busy. My other projects started going to different team members. The assignments Linda gave me became simpler and simpler. Data entry, filing, basic research that an intern could do. I was being erased, systematically pushed aside. I finally worked up the courage to go to HR. The representative, Beverly, listened to my story with a neutral expression that gave me no comfort. When I finished, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Do you have proof this was your work?" I showed her the emails, but they all showed me sending materials to Linda, which Beverly interpreted as collaboration. "It seems like this was a team effort," she said carefully. "And Linda was the lead. Without more concrete evidence, there's not much we can do." HR sided with the newly promoted senior director. I was just an analyst making accusations that sounded like sour grapes. The personal costs started mounting fast. I began having anxiety attacks on Sunday nights, dreading Monday mornings. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake replaying that conference room scene, imagining all the things I should have said. I stopped answering calls from friends. I stopped going to family dinners. My grandmother noticed immediately. "Baby, something's wrong with you," she said one afternoon, her hand on my cheek. "You don't smile anymore." I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. That I'd stayed silent when it mattered most. That I'd betrayed her teachings about the dignity of work. Then came my performance review. After 4 years of excellent ratings, I was suddenly not meeting expectations. Linda listed various concerns about my attitude, my initiative, my team collaboration. The document was a masterpiece of corporate assassination. Each carefully worded criticism designed to build a case against me. I signed it because I didn't know what else to do. 3 months after the stolen presentation, Linda announced another major project in a team meeting. I sat there with my notepad trying to look professional while my insides churned. She went through the assignments, and when she got to my name, she smiled that same small smile I'd seen in the conference room. "You'll be supporting Jerome on the data analysis," she said. Jerome was a junior analyst who'd been hired 6 months ago. I was being asked to support someone I'd trained. Something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally woke up. I felt this heat rising from my chest to my face, and before I could think about what I was doing, I stood up. The scrape of my chair against the floor made everyone turn. My voice came out shaky but loud enough. "I need to say something." The room went silent. Linda's smile vanished. "This can wait until after the meeting," she said, her voice sharp. But I shook my head. "No, it can't. It's waited too long already." And then I told them everything. I explained how I'd spent 3 months on the product launch presentation, how I'd sent it to Linda the night before, how she presented it as her own work the next day. I pulled out my phone and showed them emails from my personal account with timestamps and attachments. I showed them drafts I'd saved to my cloud storage, all dated weeks before the presentation. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. But I didn't stop. I talked about the systematic marginalization that followed, the way my assignments changed, the way I'd been pushed out. When I finished, I looked around the table. Some people wouldn't meet my eyes, but others were nodding slowly. Brianna spoke up. We all knew whose work that really was. 2 other team members agreed quietly. Linda's face went from red to pale. She started to say something, but I cut her off. "I'm done," I said, grabbed my bag, and walked out. I thought I'd just ended my career. Instead, I'd started it. HR called me the next morning, and this time, Beverly's tone was completely different. After my confrontation, 3 other team members had come forward with their own stories about Linda taking credit for their work. The company launched a formal investigation. They found the original files on the server, all created and modified by me, with metadata that proved everything. The CEO requested a personal meeting. I walked into his office terrified, but I'd already decided I had nothing left to lose. He apologized personally, which shocked me. He explained that Linda had been terminated and that they wanted to make things right. They offered me her position. I sat there for a moment looking at this man who'd applauded my stolen work 3 months earlier. And I realized something. I didn't want to stay in a place where I'd had to fight this hard just to be believed. I declined the promotion but negotiated for a different role in another department. Better pay, clear reporting structure, fresh start. But the real change wasn't about the job. In the months that followed, I enrolled in public speaking courses. I started seeing a therapist who helped me understand why I'd stayed silent. We traced it back to my grandmother's well-meaning advice, to my fear of seeming difficult, to a lifetime of being told that quiet competence was the safest path for someone who looked like me. I realized that my grandmother's philosophy was incomplete. Work should speak for itself. Yes, but you still have to speak for your work. Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for others to erase you. I started mentoring other young women in the company, especially the ones who reminded me of my younger self. The ones who kept their heads down and hoped someone would notice. I told them my story, all of it, including the part where I stayed silent. I wanted them to learn from my mistake without having to make it themselves. Looking back now, that moment of silence almost destroyed me. It cost me my mental health, opportunities I'll never get back, and nearly my sense of self-worth. But breaking that silence, standing up in that meeting with my voice shaking and my hands trembling, that saved me. Not immediately and not easily, but truly, I won't lie and say speaking up fixed everything overnight. The investigation was stressful. Some colleagues avoided me afterward. I had moments of doubt where I wondered if I should have just kept quiet and found another job. But here's what I know now. The cost of silence is always higher than the cost of speaking. Silence protects the wrong people. It lets injustice continue. It tells you that you're not worth defending even to yourself. When you speak up, you might face temporary discomfort. You might face fear. You might face uncertainty about what comes next. But when you stay silent, you face something worse. The slow eraser of your dignity, your work, and eventually yourself. And unlike the risks of speaking up, you can't recover from that kind of erasure. It becomes part of who you are. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Don't stay silent about it. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever stayed silent when you should have spoken up? What happened? Your story matters. Subscribe because I'm sharing more real talk about navigating workplace challenges, finding your voice, and taking back your power. Remember, your silence might feel safe, but your voice, that's where your freedom lives. I'll see you in the next.